Hello, and welcome to another lesson from Level Up Mathematics. In today's lesson, we will be converting linear equations to slope-intercept form. Before we start, let's look at some examples of equations that are written in slope-intercept form, and then some equations that are not written in slope-intercept form. So, for example, if you have y equals 2x plus 5, we know this is written in slope-intercept form because the y is by itself. And then we have y equals mx plus b. So it is very apparent that our m is 2 and our b is 5. Now, sometimes you'll have a linear equation written like this. Y equals 6 minus 5x. The y is by itself, and the other two terms are backwards from the first two, but we can still tell that the slope is -5 because that's our coefficient of x, and that our b is positive 6. So it's still easy to determine what is the slope and what is the y-intercept. Now, let's look at some examples of linear equations not in slope-intercept form. So if I have something like this, 5x minus 2y equals 10. Here, the y is not by itself. So when we're asked to find the slope, we have no idea what the slope is. When we're asked to find the y-intercept, we can't tell just by looking at the equation, all right? Another example might be something if I have y minus 2 equals 3 parenthesis x minus 5. The y is not by itself. So again, I don't know what the slope is, and I don't have any idea what the y-intercept is. So if we want to easily identify the slope and the y-intercept from an equation, we need to be able to convert that linear equation into slope-intercept form. So let's look at example 1. It says find the slope and y-intercept for each linear equation shown below. So in problem A, we have -2y is equal to 5x minus 10. This is not in slope-intercept form because the y is not by itself. Now, to get the y by itself, we're going to use inverse operations. So our first term is -2 times y equals 5x minus 10. And the inverse operation of multiply is divide. So I will divide by -2 every single term. So -2 divided by -2 would be positive 1y. 5 divided by -2 would be -5 over 2x. And -10 divided by -2, positive 5. So now we can easily tell what our slope is, -5 over 2, and what our y-intercept is, positive 5. All right, problem B. Y minus 5 equals 3 times the quantity x minus 5. So here, if we use inverse operations to get the y by itself, the opposite of minus 5 is plus 5. So we'll plus 5 on the left side, and we'll plus 5 on the right side. So this would zero out and leave you y. Here we'll have to distribute. 3 times x is 3x. 3 times -5 is -15. And then we have plus 5. So now just combine your like terms. Y equals 3x minus 10. So our slope is 3. Our y-intercept, -10. All right, problem C. We have 4x minus 2y is equal to 8. Now, this is the first problem we've had 2 terms that we need to deal with. So in this case, we want to move the x term using inverse operations and then divide by whatever the coefficient of y is. So to move the positive 4x, we would have to subtract 4x from both sides, because the opposite of positive 4x is negative 4x. So this would zero out, and we're left with -2y equals positive 8 minus 4x. Never, ever combine those two terms, because the 8 is a constant. It doesn't have a variable attached to it. So they're not like terms and they cannot be combined. Now, divide everything in your problem by -2. So -2 divided by -2 is positive 1y. 8 divided by -2 is -4. -4 divided by -2 is positive 2x. So now we can tell that the slope is positive 2 and the y-intercept -4. Pause the video and try problem D on your own. All right, welcome back. Hopefully, as your first step, you subtracted 2x from the left side and the right side. This zeroed out, leaving you -6y equals -12 minus 2x. And then you divide by -6. So -6 divided by -6 is positive 1y. -12 divided by -6 is positive 2. And then here we have be careful here. We're dividing -2 by -6, and we want to write that in fraction form. So positive 1/3 x. So our m, or our slope, is 1/3. Our y-intercept, positive 2. Now, if you got any part of that problem wrong, pause the video and fix it now before continuing. All right, example 2. Rewrite each of the following in slope-intercept form, and then use your calculator to create a table of values for the line represented by each equation below. Now, in this problem, I'll be using the Desmos calculator to make my tables, but you can use whatever graphing calculator you have available to you. All right, problem A, we have 2y plus x equals 12. So remember, I want to move the x term and then divide by the coefficient of y. So to move positive x, I would have to subtract x on the left and subtract x on the right. So 2y, this would zero out, equals 12 minus, to make this problem a little easier, you may want to put a 1 in front of that x. I think you might make less mistakes. Now, we're going to divide by the coefficient of y, which is 2. So this would be y equals 6 minus 1/2 x. So now I'm going to come to my calculator and I'm going to enter my equation. 6 minus 1 over 2 x. Now on Desmos, to make a table, I just hit the little wrench button and select table, and then I'll have to change the x values in my table to match what's on my paper. So I want my first x value to be -4, and that gives me a y value of 8. I want my next x value to be -2, and that gives me a 7. They already have 0, and then I want my last x value to be 4. So 4. So that's how you make a table. All right, let's look at problem B. We have x minus 4y is equal to 24. So I want to start off by subtracting x from both sides. So that would give me -4y equals 24 minus 1x. Now I'm going to divide everything by -4. And when I do that, I get -6. Now be very careful here. You have a -1 divided by a -4. And a negative divided by a negative gives me positive 1/4 x. All right, now I'm going to delete my previous table and my previous equation because I'm going to change my equation to -6 plus 1 over 4 x. All right, to make the table, I'll hit the wrench button, press the table, change that -2 to a -8, change the -1 to a -4, and then 0 is already given, and then 4, -5. All right, example 3. So we've learned how to create a table of values now. Now we're going to talk about how to make a graph. In example 3, convert each of the following to slope-intercept form and then sketch. All right, so in problem A, we have 6x minus 3y is equal to 18. So remember, we want to move the x and then divide by the coefficient of y. So to move positive 6x, I would subtract 6x. So this will zero out, leaving me negative 3y equals 18 minus 6x. Now, divide by the coefficient of y. So everything is going to get divided by negative 3. So 18 divided by negative 3 is negative 6. And then negative 6 divided by negative 3, positive 2x. So now I know my m is 2 and my b is negative 6. Now, when you're creating a graph, here's something that may help you remember how to create the graph. The b is where you begin. So I'm going to put a dot at negative 6. Okay. The m is how you move your pencil to get another dot. M, move. B, begin. M, move. Now, to make it easier, if you have a whole number, you want to write it as a fraction so you know how much to move up and over. So because this is positive 2, I'll move up 2 and to the right 1. Now, I'll only need 2 points to create a line. And there's our line. All right, problem B. We have y minus 2 equals 1/4 times the quantity x minus 12. Now here, the y is almost by itself. We just need to get rid of the minus 2. So the inverse operation for minus 2 is plus 2. So I'll add 2 to the left side and add 2 to the right side. So y would equal, now we'll distribute this, 1/4 x, 1/4x. 1/4 of negative 12 is negative 3, and then we have the plus 2. So y equals 1/4 x. Negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1. So our m is 1/4. Our b is negative 1. So remember, this is the begin. This is how we move our pencil to get our second point. So I'm going to begin at negative 1. And then my slope is positive 1/4. So I'll move up 1 and right 4. And then draw the line. All right, problem B. We have negative 3x minus 4y equals negative 16. So I want to move the x term. So I'll add 3x to both sides. And that's going to leave me negative 4y equals negative 16 plus 3x. Now divide everything by negative 4. So y equals negative 16 divided by negative 4, positive 4. 3 divided by negative 4 is negative 3/4 x. So our m is negative 3/4. Our b equals 4. So I'll begin at positive 4. And then because my slope is negative, this time instead of going up 3, we'll go down 3 and right 4. So 1, 2, 3, right 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, pause the video and try problem D on your own. All right, welcome back. Let's see how you did. In my first step, I added 3 to get y equals, then I distributed the negative 2 to get negative 2x plus 8 plus 3. So y equals negative 2x plus 11. Oh, I made a mistake. All right, hopefully you Did not make the mistake I did. Let me fix that. I should have subtracted 3 in my first step. So y equals negative 2x plus 8 minus 3, which would be y equals negative 2x plus 5. So my slope was negative 2. My b was positive 5. So I'm going to begin at 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, my slope, I need to write it as a fraction. So I know I'm going to go down 2 and write 1. So hopefully you got this one right, but if you didn't, pause the video and correct anything that you got wrong before moving on to example 4. All right, now in example 4 is one way this might be tested on a standardized test. It says the graph of a linear function is shown on the grid. Which equation is best represented by this graph? Now, the one thing you might want to do on the graph is identify your M and B so you can match it up with the correct answer. But I always like to try to eliminate 1 or 2 bad answers before we start. So let's see if we can do that. I know 1, 2, 3. Our B is negative 3. All right. Now, what is our M? I need to find another friendly point here. So let's see. This one looks pretty friendly. Let's see what our change in Y over change in X is for this graph, our rise over run. So let's see, if I go up, that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going up 5 and over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so my M is 5 over 7. Well, if you look at answer choice A and B, we can automatically eliminate A and B. So we only need to check C and D. So let's check answer choice C first. In answer choice C, we have y minus 2 equals 5 over 7 times x minus 7. So I'm going to start out by adding 2. So y would equal, now I'll distribute, 5 over 7 times x would be 5 7's x. 5 over 7 times negative 7 would be negative 5, and then we have plus 2. So y equals 5 over 7x. Negative 5 plus 2 is negative 3. So our M, 5 over 7, and our B is negative 3. Well, looky there. We got lucky because our B is supposed to be negative 3, and our M is supposed to be 5 over 7. So, because we eliminated answer A and B, we saved ourselves a lot of work because we only needed to check C and D, and we were lucky enough that C came out to be the answer. And that concludes today's lesson, converting to slope-intercept form.